Yes. So welcome everyone, and we're so happy to have you here. So Tandem Health and ElevenLabs, we were thinking of gathering the best, highest quality engineers and operators in Stockholm when it comes to audio engineering, LLMs, and so forth. And we're honestly so happy to have you here. And let's kick this off with Oliver.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Emma, and thank you very much, ElevenLabs, for that very nice intro. I do feel like we could have had a spicier voice, though. We could have gone with Trump or something to kick this off.
I was finally using my own voice, actually, but do it.
Nice. But yeah, hello everyone. I'm Oliver, co-founder and CTO at Tandem. And as the bot just introduced, we figured it's very nice to collect the very strong audio engineering community that we have here in Stockholm. I think we've seen so many different successful audio companies, but I think very few meetups of the different people from those companies. So very excited to have you all here. I think the main focus of today is just chatting with each other and getting to know each other and learning from each other. But we're going to start off with a fireside chat for about 30 minutes. And then after that, do a Q&A. And so you guys can ask whatever questions you have. Of course, if you want to interrupt the chat that we're having, please do make it feel like this is more like a living room situation where you can talk about whatever you want. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Great. All right. So just first, a quick introduction on Tandem Health. As the bot just said, we help clinicians focus on care, and we do this by automating clinical workflows. You're probably aware of the problem, but not the size. About 3% of global GDP is spent on admin in healthcare, so it's a ginormous problem. And fortunately, many of these problems are solvable with LLMs because it's a lot about structuring unstructured information. But happy to chat more about that later tonight. And with me I have
Jonathan, and I work at ElevenLabs. I work on the engineering side of AI safety. And maybe a quick show of hands also to keep this interactive. How many are familiar with ElevenLabs here? Okay, everybody, that's great. And how many know what AI safety is? Okay, most. Okay, that's still that's a lot of hands. But yeah, I think during this chat we'll talk more about what exactly AI safety is. But in short, my job is building systems to prevent users from being able to abuse our powerful tools into nefarious use cases. And it's a difficult job. It's a job that is multifunctional, so you work with a lot of different teams, which for me makes it super interesting. And since everybody already knew about ElevenLabs, I won't talk about what we do. So, but if you have any questions about ElevenLabs, happy to talk about after or right now. So yeah.
Called 11.
Yep, that was why?
Oh man, you're putting me on the spot right here. I feel like this was part of the onboarding process that I have forgotten at this point. So,
Jonathan, I can answer that one.
Excellent.
11/11 is Poland's National Independence Day. The founders are both Polish. So that's part one. Part two is in audio, 1 to 10. Turn it to 11. So it kind of worked out there. So that's nice. There you go, Jonathan.
I think it's clear which of those was the actual reason and which one was like a post hoc motivation thing. Cool, but nice to have you here, Jonathan. And we also have Henrik.
Yeah, Henrik. I work for Simple. It's a smaller startup with a background from voice over IP and building components for that. So we've done a few of those works like building codecs and echo cancelers and stuff like that. But about 2 years ago, we refocused because we saw like LLMs were taking off and so, and we realized that there's not so many people that actually have built signal processing components for that. And so instead of doing like human-to-human communication, we refocused to do human-to-machine and trying to improve that as much as possible because it works slightly different and you can optimize in slightly different ways then. So.
Nice. Very interesting, and we'll get into those details a bit later. Cool. But yeah, let's kick things off. I'm super curious to hear more about your job, Jonathan. What is AI safety at ElevenLabs?
So we divide AI safety into 3 main pillars. So it's moderation, accountability, and then provenance. So moderation is all about finding people who are abusing our platform. So Of course, at our scale, we have to do it automatically. So we deploy models that are able to determine if somebody is using our platform for bad use cases. Of course, these models aren't perfect, and we don't want to have the threshold too high for these models so that we start over moderating on legitimate users. So we also have to have a moderation team that then that takes care of the unclear cases and maybe about more complex cases where it might be a little bit unclear whether this is actually a bad use case or not. And there's like many layers into the whole moderation system that we can also talk more about. But yeah, basically moderation is about finding the bad actors. Then we have the accountability. So whoever is breaking our rules, there's many different types of enforcement that we have on them, but it could be, for example, warning them that, hey, because quite often somebody might by mistake be doing something on our platform that they shouldn't, or maybe they were just testing something out. I think all of us have done that. You might go into ChatGPT or a similar tool, and then you try, you're testing the boundaries of the tool. So if there's just a few cases of harmful activity, then we might have hand out the warning. But of course, in worst cases, we then of course ban the user. And yeah, so accountability is about enforcing our policies and about tracing who has developed the content. And then lastly, we have provenance. So provenance is all about. I'm sorry for my phone. For end users and companies to be able to determine if content has been generated by AI tools and specifically our model. So, for example, we have deployed a model that has extremely high accuracy in being able to determine if audio has been generated by us. And yeah, we as these models have become better, it's hard to sometimes distinguish what is real and not, and that's what we're trying to combat with these provenance systems.
Interesting. So you're doing some sort of watermarking of the audio that you're generating, or how does that work?
There's many different ways that you can do it. One is watermarking. Then we have C2PA. So C2PA is that we're embedding metadata into the files. This metadata can, of course, then be removed, but the metadata is there so that you can verify that if you see this metadata, you can verify that this is actually then generated by ElevenLabs. You can also use watermarking, but watermarking is a much harder problem to solve because you have to embed some sort of signature into the actual audio files. And of course, since we're embedding audio into an audio file, you don't want to hear that. You don't want to hear the watermark. So you have to do it in an undetectable way. It has to be resistant to manipulation. So if you, for example, cut the audio or you splice a small piece of the audio, you should still be able to detect the watermark. Or if you do some transformation on this audio, let's say you pitch shift it or you slow it down or you speed it up, you still have to be able to detect these watermarks. So yeah, this is an active research problem. It's a very hard one and something that we are actively exploring.
Interesting. Henrik, have you ever seen someone do watermarking of audio successfully?
Not for that reason. We've done it for a few other cases, like trying to detect different speakers and things like that. But yeah, it's an interesting problem.
Yeah.
I'm actually curious, like now, because maybe a few years ago, watermarking an image was kind of a trivial thing to do, and you could do it quite well. But I feel like now it should be trivial to remove the watermark with LLMs. I haven't thought about that, but like the whole watermark of images business must be completely gone as a thing.
Yeah, so that's the other side of the problem is that bad actors aren't supposed to be able to remove your watermark, and also they shouldn't be able to impersonate your watermark so that you can pretend that ElevenLabs created that content. So yeah, it's it's a hard research problem, but a very interesting one.
Yeah. Cool. And what do you see as the most common misuses of ElevenLabs that you see today?
Again, most of the users who use our platform use it for legitimate reasons. So, it's a very tiny, small portion of users that try to use it for some nefarious use cases. One might be, for example, scams or impersonation. So people might use our voice technology to call people and try to scam them for money. or then people might try to impersonate another person. And yeah, these are all things that we try to detect with our both automated systems and then our manual moderation, and also our investigative team who looks at all of the data that we collect and tries to figure out who are the bad actors.
And how do you detect who's doing it appropriately and not? Because some of my lovely colleagues who are here today, it's not uncommon they will generate me saying something really inappropriate, and I think that's a legitimate use. It's good fun. But how do you detect that from someone who's doing it maliciously?
Totally. So it's not just about the content, it's also about user signals. So we might, for example, store or ask you, what are you using ElevenLabs for? So if you are generating, for example, fiction, the rules on what you are allowed to generate are, of course, much wider, because maybe you are building an audiobook, for example, and we don't want to be policing the type of content that exists in literature. Of course, maybe to a large extent, at least. So we use user signals, we use workspace signals or company signals, and try to see how have you generally been using the platform. Are you constantly trying to are you testing the limits of what you can do with our platform all the time,
right.
Or is this like a one-time case that was either by mistake or for another reason? So
right.
It's taking all of the signals that we can to be able to make those decisions.
Right. Yeah, and I guess volume makes a big difference here. Like my lovely colleagues do this once every other week. It's a big difference from having like 100 call agents calling someone all the time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. And do you have any, I'm not sure takes, but of course there was this big controversy now maybe a year ago with when ChatGPT launched advanced voice mode regarding to Scarlett Johansson and whether or not her voice had been cloned. Does ElevenLabs weigh in on such issues, and how do you stand?
Well, our policy is that we are against unauthorized use of voice. So if you are using somebody else's voice without their permission, that is strictly prohibited. And we have, for example, launched a tool called No-Go Voices, where we have a huge library or we basically have an AI tool that determines if it is a famous person or not. And if we detect that you're trying to clone a famous person, then we put additional verifications before you can actually use this voice. So we really do try to make sure that you can only use the voice if you are allowed to use the voice.
Cool. And also curious here, kind of what do you see as the most exciting or coolest use cases of ElevenLabs that you're seeing today?
That's a good question. I think like every week or every month at least, you find out about some new very cool use case that you didn't think of before. I think the one that sticks to mind for me is the one that I learned about when I first learned about ElevenLabs in the first place, and that's how we are helping ALS or people who have ALS preserve their voice. So ALS is a neurodegenerative disease, or it's a hard word, that basically results at the end of the disease where you will lose your voice. So if you can record enough audio when you still have your voice, or you have been speaking in podcasts, or you have clips of your recorded, we can use that to then clone your voice, and then you can continue communicating with your own voice. And I think that was a powerful use case that really drew me into the company. So everything that has like a human impact, I think those are very, very powerful. But other use cases that I can think of is I was just visiting this Supercell's AI Innovation Lab, and for those who don't know, Supercell is a gaming company, and they were using conversational AI to give NPCs like that you are able to converse with NPCs, and I think like games will be much more immersive in the future, and I think that's exciting for all gamers.
That's really cool. I don't know if you guys remember, there was like a demo on Xbox in like 2012 with Milo, which was like okay, maybe that doesn't ring a bell for people, but this sounds like you're like finally living up to the demos of Microsoft in 2012, which is great to see. Maybe someone else from the audience has a great example of an exciting use case of ElevenLabs. I feel like many people have seen it.
I scroll a lot on TikTok and there's so many memes that use ElevenLabs and the audio generated voices, which makes it quite exciting.
Is that good or bad?
Well, it's humorous at least.
Yeah.
I actually have a pretty funny story that when I was interviewing for ElevenLabs, and then someone was mentioning one of the voices, showing one of the voices, and I was like, oh my god, I've heard that one for so many times. And then all of a sudden when I was on Instagram and stuff, and you get so in it, so then I was like, oh my god, that's Mark. Oh my god, that's Adam, etc. And you get full, it's crazy when you actually know the voices that ones have, then you just hear them everywhere.
Right. Yeah, that's very interesting. Is there a market for voices now at ElevenLabs? Can you?
Absolutely. So you can license your own voice and let other users use your voice and make money out of it. So yeah, I think it's a very exciting program in giving voice actors another way to make money. And I don't have the numbers. Maybe Jack in the audience remembers, but we have been giving paying some voice actors quite a lot of money, and yeah, it's a new exciting feature, and yeah, I think it's very cool. Try it out.
As we've seen, most people already have. But let's move it over to Henrik. I mean, there's lots of other cool things happening in the space. What are some of the most exciting things you've seen in either speech to text or text to speech?
Yeah, I mean, we use it a lot, so it's interesting to see how quickly it evolves. I mean, you start to use one thing, and then a few weeks later, you have something improved to test out. And so, yeah, it's from when we started until where we are now. When we discovered ElevenLabs, that was, of course, made a big improvement compared to what was there before that we could try out. So, but otherwise, I think in terms of applications and so, it's just exploding with the number of things you can do. But at the same time, it takes a while for people to kind of accept to talk to something and get a response back. So
yeah,
you have some really early adopters, and then you have the general market will take a little bit longer, I think. So
yeah, I think something we saw with Tandem, we expected kind of general population to be a lot more skeptical of speech to text, to be very skeptical of being transcribed in their medical conversations. But we've seen actually very, very little pushback in terms of that. People think it's completely fine to be transcribed because I guess they see people using transcription all the time, so it feels very normalized to be transcribed. It doesn't feel like something alien. So I've been very positively surprised.
It's a little bit easier when you don't see it so much. I mean, it just happens in the background, right?
Yeah.
For me, I'm working more with the conversational when you talk to something and get a response back, right? And
right.
A lot of the big companies have that already, but there's still not that many people that use it, or
right.
A little bit higher threshold still.
For sure. And I'm very curious here about this work you're doing on kind of audio to machine communication rather than audio to human communication. What's different in how you want to kind of encode the audio or transmit the audio?
Yeah, I mean, it's different backends. If you talk to a person, they can get disturbed by certain type of noises, and so you need to make sure it's clean in a certain way. Whereas if you talk to a machine, then getting the content across is the most important. There are certain things that doesn't disturb a machine, so you can kind of optimize for that. And if you know what kind of speech-to-text algorithm you have on the other side, you can also optimize for word error rates and stuff like that already when you create your coding or your echo cancellation algorithm. So those are the kind of things that we have worked on to sort of build that into how we train those models or build those models.
I guess what's surprising to me is that the models, I mean, they've still been trained on humanly transcribed data, so they should still have kind of the same bias as the humans do. Yeah,
to some extent, but especially when it comes to echo cancellation, and so you will distort or ruin some of the content. and then you have to choose a little bit how to do it, and so, and that's where this comes in, for example.
Right, so the speech-to-text models might be more okay with the echo, whereas humans might not be. So
They might be more okay with certain type of noises, so that would be disturbing for you to listen to, for example. Or you would get tired from listening to it for a while.
right. That's it.
But those are some examples. But it's also that you can train specifically for, like Whisper, for example, to try to get as good score as possible for word error rate, whereas with a human it's a little bit different.
Yeah, very interesting. And kind of how else have you seen LLMs shift the work you guys do at Simple? Like, how is it affecting? What types of what do you call it, jobs you guys get?
Well, of course, we, like everybody who develops, you use it a lot for your own productivity, right? So, then it's also, since we're actually building these things, we're testing both with what's publicly available, like with APIs, but we're also building our own system based on public, like llama models and stuff like that. So constantly testing sort of the boundaries and what makes sense there. So I guess that's the interesting part there, that so seeing how things evolve and new models coming out all the time.
For sure. And how much are actually ElevenLabs? How much are you investing in kind of the pure like text-to-text side of things versus completely focused on the text-to-speech?
I mean, we are mainly focused on text-to-speech and now also speech-to-text. Like those are the most important products currently, but we are constantly exploring other domains as well. So I don't know. Stay tuned.
No big reveals here today.
No, unfortunately not.
Yeah, and I guess one big change is also when these speech-to-speech models came out. So that's kind of a new aspect as well, where you don't go through text as intermediate.
How are these models doing? Because for me, it felt like that was a thing a few years ago, but maybe it's is it coming up again as a?
Well, OpenAI has it, and it's kind of interesting because it captures more of what's happening, right? So it can also listen to the background, and like if a dog is barking, or you can get some of that with Whisper as well, with like audio tokens and so. But of course, it's much broader when you have the audio samples and can use those. But it also creates other sort of interesting problems and so or new challenges.
What are some of those challenges?
Well, in a way, it makes it a bit harder, right, when you bundle everything together to actually see what's there. If you get the intermediate text, then you have something to analyze, and you can do things like word errors and stuff like that. But if it's audio to audio, then there are some steps that are kind of hidden and a little bit unclear what happens. So you have to think a little bit different in terms of how to test things and so as well.
Right. And so I think relating to testing, I'm very curious. Now we've worked quite a lot with audio at Tandem, and one thing we're running into a lot is how do you test audio pipelines well? Because audio is so multidimensional, it's also very high volume data. How do you do testing well in an audio context?
Yeah, I guess it depends a lot on scale and really what your kind of use case is. For us, we are actually focusing most on mobile, and we've worked a lot on that for many years. We kind of know what areas are difficult and where we need to spend some maybe more manual time to test things, and then there are certain parts you can test automatically, or that this will work, so it's not a problem. But once you get to scale, like we worked with Meta and earlier worked at Skype and so on, then there's a lot of things you can do with A/B testing and so to try out different parameters and find what devices have more problems than others and stuff like that. So, but then it's more about building, even if they are not perfect metrics, then once you get to the scale of like millions and millions of users per day, you can find things.
Right. Yeah. So deploy to production and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean that's what a lot of these bigger companies do, like Google as well. Like you're pretty sure that something is an improvement. You've tested what you can, but then you send it out like an A/B test, and you analyze the results for a month or so, and then come back and show that this gave a slightly better metric for what we were looking at, right? But you really need to scale to be able to do that when it comes down to audio.
For sure. Well, and what about ElevenLabs? How do you guys do with testing and testing audio well?
Well, from the AI safety perspective, I mean, it's a continuous process. So before we release new models, we test that are those models doing what we want them to do, and what are the potential abuse vectors that people could potentially use this for. And then we develop, well, first again, our own models to be able to detect those to as high degree of accuracy as we can. And again, then the unclear cases we send to human moderation. And then there's also continuous testing. So, I mean, users will try new things constantly with our products. So we just have to constantly monitor and get samples and label that data, and then see is what are users doing with our tools.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And so, at least it feels to me like speech to text as a problem is getting quite close to being solved, or at least like almost solved as a problem. And maybe more surprisingly, text to speech is also getting, well, not solved as fully solved, but it's like getting close to it. Well, what do you guys see as the frontier now? Like, what's the next big challenge to solve in this space?
I wouldn't say it's solved, but of course it gets to a certain level where it works for most people, but there's constantly, you find there are some scenarios where you want to improve, so it's just some people will continue to work on it for a long time. I mean, I back in the days we worked with speech codecs, and we thought that was all solved when we shipped Opus, but I've seen like 3-4 codecs after that, even though that was kind of considered a solved problem. So I think it will be the same here, that it will evolve, just more certain people will need special things that it just doesn't do well enough today. So but like maybe your use case is mostly solved.
Well, we just switched to Opus, so from this point I hope we have no more problems.
Opus is a good codec, so that's not. But it wasn't good enough for Meta, for example.
Yeah, I think from what we're seeing, because we're active in quite many countries across Europe, and I mean, for the larger European languages, speech to text works really, really well, especially if you put an LLM after the speech to text layer, and then correct it with the context of who is this clinician, what's their name, what's their profession, what are some words they usually use, and then you can capture the kind of long tail of words that the speech to text model will get incorrectly. But for the smaller European languages, I think from kind of Swedish, Danish and down, it is still not that good. We've done some trials with Lithuanian, and it's actually quite working. It's working at least well enough for people to be really impressed, but still unclear in production how well it will work when they're actually using it.
Yeah, I agree with basically both of you. I mean, the models are already great, especially ours, but there's still a lot of room for improvement. I mean, we can reduce the latency, we can reduce the word error rate, we can enable more accents, more languages, and we are actively working on it, of course. And yeah, it's only going to get better, and there's still a lot of improvement to do.
And what would be either of your recommendations from, if you have a base model like Whisper, it's quite good at Swedish in general, but then maybe it's not, well, it is actually quite good at Skånska. But like if you want maybe an even more extreme accent, how do you tweak a model to make it work really well in a specific setting?
Well, you should use ElevenLabs instead. But yeah, maybe, did you have a...
Actually we haven't worked so much with languages that way, mostly English, and there it also works really well in different languages, although we have seen some problems with certain accent. But it's more been playing around with the different sizes of models and so on, see what works. I haven't really tried to improve it like by adding extra layers to it or so.
Right. Yeah.
But
So-
there's definitely work to be done there. And like I think your use case is a little bit different than what I've typically been looking at, because in a conversational sense, you don't really have time to like autocorrect back and forth. That takes too much delay, and then it's not going to be a natural conversation any longer, and then
Right.
mistakes are more obvious. So that's then you have to be a little bit more careful while still not using too much compute, because then it also gets slow, right? So.
It makes sense. I think for us, what we did for Swedish is that we fine-tuned for Swedish medical speech, but that whole process is quite heavy, and we don't want to redo it for every language and dialect we run into. So now kind of exploring how we can make a more kind of light-handed process as we move between countries. Well, I think another thing that this kind of
What's ElevenLabs sort of approach to multilingual and sort of, is it, do you do what's under the hood? Sort of, do you have a single language models that in UK and then route it, or is it sort of, do you have multilingual models, or what's the approach?
We do have so it's multilingual models. We train it's multilingual. That's the answer.
So there's one big model that does all the different descriptions. Maybe don't know.
Well, we are getting into questions also that I'm. I might not have all the answers, and if I had, I'm not sure if I can answer them. So, but we do have multilingual support. Yeah.
Right.
Question.
Yeah.
How do you at Tandem build a fine-tuning dataset?
Yeah, so it's a great question, because obviously we can't just take patient conversations and sit and listen into them and then fine-tune on that data. What we actually did is we hired a lot of medical students and professionals, and we built a very tiny web app that showed them sentences of words which we knew we had bad accuracy on. Then they recorded hours and hours of that audio, and then we fine-tuned on it together with some of the publicly available datasets. So kind of a combination of using LLMs to generate synthetic data, then specifically synthetic data that included things we know we're bad at. Fine-tune on that. Yeah,
Slightly or a very different question, but I mean, you're in the health business, so how do you handle like regulatory requirements? Maybe you can speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, of course, and a very important topic that of course comes up in all our sales processes. And so we're hosted on Microsoft Azure, and Azure in Gävle in Sweden, so the Sweden central region. And once data enters that data center, it doesn't leave that data center until it's streamed back to the user itself. And so what we're using our own fine-tuned Whisper running on GPUs in Azure Kubernetes service there in Gävle. And then we're using Azure OpenAI to do the text-to-text parts of the pipeline. And of course, then you get guarantees, well, similar to if you were using any other Azure-based service, right? So the question becomes then, are you allowed to use Azure services at all, rather than are you allowed to use OpenAI? And there, of course, the European law right now is very clear. Since the summer of 2023, you are allowed to use American cloud providers to process health data. But of course, given the current relationship between the EU and the US, that could, of course, change.
And if I may follow up on that.
Yeah, go for it.
So, because you deliver a product for the clinicians.
Yes.
So, I guess in a sign-off flow, it's fine.
Yeah.
Right? Because the models will make errors.
Yeah.
So, how do you see the road forward to fully automate that kind of chain?
Yeah.
Without a sign-off and avoid false positives or false negatives.
Yeah. Of course, a very important question. I mean, if you look a few years down the line, it's very clear to us that LLMs are going to be providing quite a large fraction of care, because I mean they're already more accurate in some narrow care use cases, but quite soon they will be more accurate in very many care use cases, and they're also, of course, orders of magnitude cheaper than humans. So, the only way for us as a society to provide cheaper and higher quality care in the future will be to use LLMs for at least a significant fraction of it. But that being said, we're nowhere near that right now, right? And so that's why we're focusing purely right now on administrative use cases where A, the care has already been provided, right? So you're just documented what has already been done, and B, where the clinician is in the loop. So the clinician is only exposed to information that they've already been exposed to themselves during the consultation. And so that significantly lowers the risk. But of course, we are moving into the territory where we want to make suggestions to the clinician as well. And we want to help them ask the right questions and find documentation and all these things. But then you're straying into kind of medical device territory, which is much more heavily regulated. But what I see as kind of a muscle we really want to build, and that's going to be really important, is being able to ship kind of LLM-based medical devices, because that's kind of, right now it's kind of a squaring a round hole, but I think, you know, if you're able to do that really well, that's going to be a really competitive moat, and so that's what we're aiming to do. We're training up that muscle.
But in your case, I mean, just by providing sort of a journalförteckningar, like
Medical notes,
yeah, must be such a big sort of leap in quality. So, like, if you have you read sort of the typical
Yeah.
record? If you ever was in a meeting and they guess like what notes did they take?
Yeah,
it's like sometimes very, very scarce. And so, like, if someone else sees that in the next meeting, there's no way they can understand what took place in that meeting.
yeah.
I mean, must be a super lift in quality.
Very much. It's very much an equalizer, right? I think if we have the ambition of being better than the best doctor at writing medical notes, I think that would be too ambitious. It would be too hard to do that. But we very much equalize the quality, right? We're probably better than, let's say, 95% of doctors, and we're a lot better than the bottom 20% of doctors. I think when we went to our first clinic, the clinic manager was like, "Oh, finally, this doctor," whatever their name, he has so much ADHD, he writes so shitty medical notes, but finally with Tandem, he writes nice medical notes. It's such a nice thing to see. So very much like that. But then if you continue that line further, as you were able to provide LLM-based care, that's going to be a huge equalizer in terms of the quality of care you get as well, right? Because now where you live matters a lot for what the quality of care you get. And we have a law in Sweden saying that the care should be equal across Sweden, but very much is not. But with LLMs, of course, we can make sure that it is actually the same wherever you are.
You think? What do you think about the kind of the overlap between AI safety and healthcare, where what you touched on, like at the end there, where you could actually monitor clinicians? Like, are they actually giving the equal care to these people?
Yeah.
How do you think about that? Like, where you can actually like weed out bad actors in the healthcare system, if you will.
Yeah, we're trying to stay quite far away from that. We're as far away from it as possible right now, because obviously, I mean, doctors use our product, they love our product, they don't want to feel monitored by our product, right? Then people are not gonna like it, right? So that's definitely not our focus. And maybe, of course, in the future, when we can provide a lot of value by monitoring, we might do that, but that's only when we can provide a lot of value, right? I think, I mean, when we were starting Tandem, we ran into lots of problems from the equivalent of Jonathan over at OpenAI, because they have their filters on, what are you allowed to use the models for, and when you're doing like anything with care and children or medicine and children, those filters were triggered all the time, and so we had so much problems providing like the service to anyone dealing with children. But then, of course, we spoke to Microsoft and got those filters turned off. But it was quite annoying. But maybe you get requests from annoying people like me all the time. So please turn off the filters.
Absolutely, but then of course we have a team that reviews those cases, and then if you were to ask us, I'm sure it would be okay. So you're a very trusted partner, and but yeah, those safeguards are there in place again because there are also nefarious use cases that could abuse this. So in many cases, it's better to have kind of safety by default and then make exceptions for the good actors, just to make sure that the bad cases are stopped.
Yeah, that makes sense. Nice. I think one topic we haven't really touched here is the topic of user interface. I think with LLMs and with speech to text and text to speech, how you interface with computers, I think, is going to change radically. We're already seeing it. You can use your voice to talk to the computer. You don't need a screen anymore. What are some of your ideas about how will this affect the whole computer industry?
Do I go first or?
No, I think it's very interesting. I mean, we'll see new devices coming out. I mean, there's a few companies that have tried it, but and failed, most of them so far. But at some point, one of the bigger guys will come out with something really interesting, right? So, and then, like I said before, I think it's about adoption as well. That people are not quite used to talking to devices yet, but I mean, it's coming more and more, and especially if you use it in certain scenarios, like in your use case where it doesn't disrupt in any way, or like people are already used to having it in their cars and things like that. It's picking up, but it's hard to say exactly what the sort of killer thing will be. But just this, I guess, yesterday with OpenAI and IO merging, and so it looks like they are coming out with something as well. So
You think Johnny Ive is going to solve it? They're going to figure it out.
hope so.
We'll see. Yeah, definitely interesting times ahead, at least. So we also know that a laser projected display on the hand was not the solution either. What about you, Jonathan? Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm biased again, but I think audio, I mean, that's going to be a huge interface. I can't wait for the world where I can just speak to an assistant and it can do everything for me. Like, can you book this meeting for me? Or can you schedule actually this meeting for me? And it will go up and call the person, figure out the right time, or send them an email, or whatever medium that is that the agent can actually decide on what is the best medium to contact this person. Or can you book this flight for me? Can you build this product for me? If we take it a little bit further, of course, we're going to get the easy use cases for first. But I can't wait to have like a digital assistant that just lets me focus on the more interesting problems. So. I don't know when, but I mean, it's already coming. But when is the time when everybody will be using them? Hopefully soon. Yeah.
I think another kind of underappreciated aspect of this is procedurally generated UIs, because you can have the UI adapt to the user itself and kind of generate the React components as you go based on the data that you have, which I think definitely will happen as well.
Yeah.
Anyone in the audience have any thoughts about the future of UI given audio and LLM engineering?
I've used ElevenLabs with the Twilio interface for calling on your phone. I really like that. It's way more open source, and everybody knows how to call rather than using an interface in the intro. I also think it would be very promising to do via WhatsApp, because WhatsApp has a crazy user base.
Totally. Yeah, I think we're going to get more and more integrations to tools that people use in their everyday, and that's when the large-scale adoption is going to come. So, it's coming, and can't wait for it.
Very much so. And I'm also curious here about, obviously, there's so much money being poured into this. And clearly a lot of value being created using these algorithms. But where do you think, if you look a few years down the line, where will the value be captured? Will it be at the service provider? Oh, maybe it might just be the end user capturing value, or at the service provider, or the API provider, or maybe the cloud provider that are lying it. You guys have any thoughts there, or any ideas?
No, I think a little bit of all, right? It's going to be hard to compete with the big players on certain things, but there are always good niches where people will come up with great ideas and solve problems that the big guys would never do. So, and I think that's the interesting part, to find the right niche and do things really well for that. So
That makes sense. That's how we're reasoning as well. But if you look at Tandem today, I think, and if you look at our Microsoft deals, you will see someone capturing a lot of value we're providing. But yeah, I very much agree. What about you, Jonathan? What's your...
Well, I think the same basically. So, yeah, currently maybe it's model providers, but you know, as time moves on and everybody's models become better, we will still be the best, but maybe it becomes cheaper. So I mean, it's going to be on the application layer then, and there's so many potential applications that you can build, and when the models also become faster, they have lower latency. It's going to open up new possible verticals where you can build new applications. And again, maybe the big players won't do all of them. So there's a lot of room to build very, very cool new products in the voice AI space. And I think, and also the end user, like you said, they are also gonna capture a lot of value from just being able to access these powerful tools at a very cheap rate.
I think that's the most exciting part, the fact that the end users or the citizens of our societies are just going to benefit so much from these models. Cool. Let's
do you see any threat or opportunity in the fact that like people can build relationships with these voice bots?
Yeah, I mean, yes, totally, and it's. I mean, any place where you use AI for real world harm, that's something that we are not okay with. So any case where this would be the case, we would try to investigate, find out about it, and then stop it. So yeah, the answer is that we are like any harmful activities with AI. That's what the AI safety team is trying to prevent.
I was surprised. I don't remember the name. There was a new chatbot. I think it was a Chinese company that released a few months ago, where they had a much more emotional voice, where they had a lot better kind of intonation in how they spoke. Kind of
Monus?
I think it was Monus, yes, and they were kind of almost a bit flirty, and I think it was very surprising to me how much that affected my emotional response to it. Because with ChatGPT, I feel no connection at all. When I speak to it, like I don't feel anything. It's fantastic to learn all these things, but I don't feel like I'm connecting with a human. But just as soon as it was not more intelligent in any way, but just the tone, the intonation of the voice made me feel like, oh, this is something here. Like there's like someone on the other side.
There's Sesame where you can add the giggles and the kind of and those like this.
Yeah.
These non-verbal stuff.
It might have been Sesame.
It added.
We're so easily tricked as well.
It's so easily tricked. Yeah, I was kind of shocked myself.
Where do you think that we are on the uncanny valley graph when it comes to like speaking of? Because now when I hear like a generated voice, something in me knows that okay, I'm talking to a machine. But once it gets like to an area where you're not quite sure, you just feel like something is off.
Yeah.
Or do you think that like how far are we, and are we in it right now?
I think we're descending. I don't think we're at the bottom, but I think we're descending down. I feel like the first time, at least I think maybe I'm actually foolish here, but I feel like I've been able to detect so far every time I've interacted with the bot. Maybe that's not true. But I feel like the moment I've come out of an interaction thinking it was a human, and then after the fact realized that, shit, that was not a human, that was something else. I think that's gonna really freak me out, at least.
Yeah, and we are very techy, right? So the general public, they, of course, more fooled or wouldn't know, right? So,
yeah, it's interesting how much do you have to show that you're an AI? I'm not sure what your policy is at ElevenLabs here. Like, if you provide a bot using ElevenLabs, does the bot have to tell the human that it's an AI?
Yes, yeah, that's in our policies, and then for the user-generated side, so if you generate audio with us and you upload it into a platform, that's where provenance would come in. So C2PA, for example, then you can verify that actually, or like the platform providers can verify that this content has been generated by us and can label it on their platform as well, that this is AI-generated content. So yeah, we do believe that the end user has a right to know whether the content is AI or not.
Makes sense. Cool. It's time to open it up for more questions from the audience. So, you guys, please go ahead and shoot if you
Would you be thinking about the new like real-time translation feature? I think Google published. Do you think it will like break down language barriers if it gets like even better, or what is like the general momentum of that? Like, do we need to learn languages?
Yes.
Was that a question for me specifically, or I guess for everybody? But yeah, I can start. I mean, yeah, totally. And that our sort of motto is that you should be able to consume content in like it goes right into what we are doing as well, and yeah, I think it will break down language barriers. Like imagine going into a new country where they don't speak English that well, and you can just communicate in your native language, and they communicate in your language without any delay, and you both understand each other. I mean, I think that's a massive thing for again humanity. So yeah, it's very cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Just last week, I came out of an audit for a Spanish data security framework, and they were auditing us in Spanish. And so I would have been very excited to have this Google thing there.
Yeah, I had a similar experience just the other day. I'm renovating at home my floor, and the lady that came to do it, she only spoke Spanish, and she was waiting for some other people. So I used that exact tool because my Spanish isn't good enough. So worked out. Floor looks good.
Good.
Carl. Yeah. So do you think like the current types of models we have are, if you want a conversational agent that is indistinguishable from a human, you think the current types of models we have is enough and it's mostly a data thing? Or if not, what else should we add to the algorithm sort of? Is self-attention all you need sort of questions? What's the big missing piece in that? Or do we have what we need? A question for everyone really.
I don't know.
I mean, I would defer to the bitter lesson. It seems like just throwing more data seems to be working really well. More data and more compute. But I'm not deep into training at least speech or text-to-speech models.
Yeah, I mean, I think for part of it probably works, but it's about integrating other things to get sort of all the features in there, right? Because at the moment you throw a question, you get an answer, right? And if you want something like what I'm working on, more like conversational, you want it to flow in a little bit different way as well. You don't just want to talk to a slave, right? So there's other aspects as well that you need to build into a system to make it even more interesting.
I think to me that's a huge part of kind of talking to ChatGPT now. I mean, I spend this decent amount of time every day like chatting with it, and I think the main problem is that it's so passive. Like it doesn't take any initiative to do something in the conversation, which makes it very boring very fast.
Yeah.
Because you have to come up with literally every next topic that you want to talk about. It's like talking to the most knowledgeable but boring person on earth. It is a very great experience.
Start with grok instead.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice and boring.
But high level, that sounds like you can fine tune your way there, right? You have more active, whatever, fine tuning and preferences and system problems. Will we plateau anyway? Because, the conversational agent could never touch things or smell things or whatever sci-fi thoughts.
Yeah.
Or will it just become as good as we expect and then it's done?
Yeah. To me, I guess kind of text we're doing incredibly well right now. It seems like we don't need any new spice to do text really well. Reasoning is maybe a little bit unclear, but still it seems we're doing quite well with reasoning actually. And then audio, as we've spoken about here, is moving into kind of solitaire. It doesn't feel like we need to add any new magic sparkles or anything to solve audio either. Then I guess video is really the only modality left that humans do. And I don't know, I mean the VO3 announcement from yesterday, I mean, it also looks incredible. So it seems like the bitter lesson holds there as well. Just scaling the data and compute seems to bring us all the way. But it remains to be seen if there is something else you need. I don't think it's going to be smell, but we'll see if there's anything else. Yeah.
Just a thought or a question. It's like, I mean, to really solve this conversational aspect of it, it's like, and especially if you translate between languages. I mean, you essentially need to huge context and be able to forecast exactly what the sentence would be at the super early stage. That seems a bit challenging, but maybe with like huge models. I mean, what I will say next now is probably quite predictable. So, but to get that really fluent conversation, otherwise there's this like delay because you can't decode it really until you reach a certain token.
Yeah, very much so. So you have an image of, maybe this is it's not a nice conversational trait to have that you're always predicting what other people will say and just waiting for what you're going to say, but you have to do that to some degree as a human. Yeah, very much so. And also being able to more fluidly interrupt each other, like being okay with talking over each other for a little bit while you're figuring out what's going on, and then one person taking over. Cool. But I think it's time to,
I have a question.
Go for it.
So, if there are people in here who want to start building AI companies, what do you guys think are the most interesting use cases on the application layer right now? I want different answers from all of you. You can't say healthcare, Oliver.
No. Well, I mean, I'm not encouraging anyone to get into healthcare because it's already taken. No, but I think similar to what we've done. I mean, going on a very narrow vertical, finding a vertical where you have an answer to the question, why me, or why me and my co-founders, why are we going to be the ones to have leverage and actually really deliver value in this vertical, and go as narrow as possible, make someone absolutely love what you're doing, and then you can start going wider. I think that's kind of a true and tested playbook for winning, not just with AI, but with any startup, really.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Like, find something you really like and something you know, and where you have sort of an edge and narrow enough, then you can do something good. I mean, otherwise, it's so easy for people to replicate, right? But, there's so many fields out there, so I think there will be enough.
Yeah, so many kind of board. I mean, I have a friend now starting a company in the insurance broker space, and it's and this is not shitting on me. This is increasing in I think it's such a boring space, and no one is building for the insurance brokers because no one thinks about them. But then when you look into it, there's so much money to be earned by helping these insurance brokers being more efficient. And I think there's thousands of these domains out there. You just have to find them and see them. And because there's such a large kind of technological overhang with LLMs that haven't been implemented yet, it's no more exciting time. It's the most exciting time ever to be building.
What's the company?
Tandem.
Yeah, I'm an investor.
Yeah,
I needed to check.
You want it on record, great.
Yeah.
No, nice. They just closed their seed round.
Yeah.
Cool, but thank you, everyone. Thank you especially to you guys, but also to everyone in the audience asking great questions. This wraps up the fireside chat of things. I should also say that at Tandem we're hiring. We have lots of really interesting audio challenges, so come talk to us and see if you can help in any way. And now comes the most exciting part of the evening, which is just grabbing pizza and beer and having a chat and getting to know each other.
And also wanted to just let you guys know that now we have operations in the Nordics with ElevenLabs. So I'm actually based here in Stockholm, so setting up the Nordic practice here. So, if you're ever interested in ElevenLabs, want to chat about use cases, regardless if you're a startup or, working in an enterprise right now and want to do voice, hit me up. I'm always, available for a coffee. And Jonathan, he's unfortunately in Finland, but he's going to our San Francisco office. So he's leaving us in Scandinavia. But yeah, we're here. And as Oliver said, we both want great talent and we want to work with great talent. So yeah. Thank you so much for joining, and let's grab some pizza and beer. Yes.
One last question. So Sebastian Klarna, he did his AI avatar earnings reports in, 8 languages. Are they using ElevenLabs or not?
I need to check publicity.
It's a great use case. It's a really cool use case, actually.
Well, I can say, if you've seen the keynotes from the NVIDIA founder, that was ElevenLabs. That I know I can say.
In different languages.
In different languages.
Cool.
Yes. So that's actually public. So
nice.
You can see that too.
So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Yeah.